a launchpad owned by its users. They came out of sort of the Farcaster ecosystem. Saw you guys did a very sort of novel token launch, raise token distribution, which I think I'd like to get into, and I think have a novel approach to how at least you are approaching the economic model underneath Fei. As I tried to dive into it, I realized that there's absolutely no way for me to get information without having to sign in and dive in and all that sort of stuff. So we are rather ignorant of the details, which means that you guys get to help educate us and pull us into your vision here. So maybe let's start there. There's a gazillion launch pads, not enough cool things being launched right now. What are you guys doing differently here that has made you want to invest your heartbeats in it?
Yeah. So maybe it's valuable for me um, to kind of cover the whole ethos and start from zero, right? Um, so I think the best way to think about Faye is that Faye is a launch pad that we all own. And so what compelled us to start building this thing is because over the past couple of years, we saw every platform design systems that extract value from the ecosystem and their users instead of giving it back. And we wanted to do the complete opposite with Fei. And so holding the Fei token gives you true ownership in the launchpad. 100% of the revenue goes uh, generated by the protocol goes back to stakers, and every launch is paired with Fei as well. So the whole network compounds with every new launch that happens on the launchpad. If you're familiar with Zora or Virtuals, the pair model is similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think jumping in here, I think it's important to. I'm Atareh, by the way, and that's Wiz. But
What's up?
I think it's important. I think it's important to highlight that. I think the every launchpad before us has had a 1%, take rate, call it, and so over time that compounds into launchpads being one of the most profitable products in all of crypto. Pump Fund, I think it's on record of being like the fastest company ever, startup, whatever it might be, to like almost $1 billion, and that's just off the back of like tokenization. I think that like where Pump Fund gets a little bit of a bad rap per se is that everybody complained about there being too many tokens, but this is something the Ethereum community we've been talking about for years, that everything will be tokenized. And I think now that it's happening, there's obviously going to be, I think, people ruffling their feathers. I think one thing we wanted to look at is that, like, what Pump did was incredible, obviously, but I think that even holding the token itself, um, right now you're getting buybacks. But on their website, they say it in the disclaimer, not even that far down, it says, at any point we can change what percentage, what amount, whatever. And so, if you're, let's say, a long-term investor, you see tokenization is increasing, and you want to get a proxy for this trend, you can buy Pump and maybe go to sleep for a year, 2 years, walk away. But at any point, you don't know when they're going to take the buybacks and reduce them for whatever reason. And so that's not necessarily a sound investment. And so what do you really own if you're holding a token that a company can decide its fate effectively, where one change, 50% nuke, if not more. So I think that was really something important for us to put out there in the sense that crypto has always been about ownership and self-sovereignty. And I think a lot of what we have now doesn't represent that anymore.
So I think largely the reason Pump does that is for legal purposes. So I'm curious how you guys are structuring Fei, or what kind of gave you confidence to kind of go more directly at the ownership approach.
Clarity
Well,
Act.
Clarity Act.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Wiz, do you want me to? I can speak a little bit more about that. I think that I think with the move you saw with Coinbase just this past week. Actually, today is the ICO for Monad. Last week we saw Uniswap put out the proposal, and it looks like in earnest this will actually pass for real this time. And so I think that that's signaling to the world that the Clarity Act, and it's not that anybody can just do fee switches. There has to be very specific parameters that your token needs to follow, and if it follows that, if it has, and they lay it all out in the act, then it won't just be a SEC busting down anybody's door. It'll be treated as a commodity. And so I think that how Fei was structured in many ways was designed for specifically the Clarity Act.
Right. Okay. So I'm, I guess, most intrigued by the decision to pair launches with Fei. And maybe we should tackle that from sort of the higher level here. There's clearly an approach here where you're trying to articulate how value gets created and ultimately gets captured by the network, and thus its token holders. And I think we sort of see two approaches out there in the market. One, I would say, is more like the equity-like approach. I put Pump in this bucket, where trying to generate a lot of revenues. We'll use those revenues to buy and burn the token. Cool. The other is sort of like the money-like tokens, and I think that's the Zora quote pair model. It's L1 tokens, etc. Seems as if you guys are kind of putting those two together in an interesting way. And one of the big questions I have around sort of the pairing model is, how broadly can this be applied, or what are the conditions that are necessary for it to be applied? There's one argument where I could say it makes a ton of sense in Zora, given the sort of small, narrow, unique market. All assets are issued there, they're trading there, it's in this sort of vertically integrated experience where the market's being nested together. It really makes a lot of sense. And the competition set for those assets is maybe very minimal. But when I sort of start to think about tokens and tokens living on blockchains, and sort of the broadness and ultimately the scale I think some of these are trying to get to, it feels to me like the token pairing model might be a very big limiting factor, even just practically based on the depths of liquidity pools, etc. So help me understand the decision to go do this model beyond it just being novel.
Yeah, I think if you think about Stay like a network, it makes a lot of sense. So in the beginning, like all big things start small, but every launch on Fei compounds value to Fei itself. Just like, I mean, generally people pair new tokens with ETH, and ETH is its own network. Like, there's no reason why you can't pair it with something else like Fei as well.
I think the question is like, what is necessary for that to also work? So I would argue that a lot of folks that are launching tokens, that the decision to pair it with ETH, or which network to launch on, is mostly driven by liquidity and a sense of I would say actually liquidity is probably assuming I think infrastructure is pretty comparable across the board there. So I'm assuming that people will see this as sort of like maybe there's more of a default to the value of sort of the social context, the early believers in this network, that would warrant taking more of a risk on maybe launching with slightly less liquidity. I'm not even sure if that's fair, but say an assumption of less liquidity, but a benefit from the early users, buyers, and believers in this. Is that a good way to contextualize it?
I'll take that. I think again, I think we go back to what Wiz says is something that I think shifts us from just a launch pad, which is like, oh, okay, another fucking launch pad, to okay, like a network. And I think like when you think about it at a scale of a network, like Wiz said, everything starts small. There's of course going to be, I think, growing pains with anything. There's like liquidity and all the sorts of things. But I think as time goes on, the key thing we believe is that ownership changes the game here, because at a smart contract level, you own. If you have Fei, you stake it, you own it. And so in the true crypto sense of it, and so I think that what we call the early believers here, faithfuls, in the sense that, and it wasn't planned, it's like FEYTH, faith, have faith.
That's good. Yeah.
Wasn't planned, but like the best things I think are emergent. And so that was one of the things that kind of came out. I woke up one morning and I'm like, Fei, and I was like, there's something here, because I think we anything that can grow requires that kind of belief. Bitcoin was the exact same thing. It just required a bunch of irrational people. And then over 15 years, you saw it became the greatest trade that you could have taken in the last 2 decades. And so I think that the ownership piece is important. The other part that I was going to say is that the fact that when you launch on Fei as a creator, whether you decide to take the creator rewards yourself, or if you pass them along to the stakers, or you do a split of the two, you're accruing ownership in the network each time. And so we think that, do you guys remember the magic of like NFTs in 2020, 2021? Of
course.
In the absolute madness that people did for their PFPs, because people thought that I own my PFP, I own my NFT. And as time came to pass, we understood that this is actually not real ownership. It was fake ownership, quite frankly. Companies can decide to sell this NFT project to them and this and that and whatever. So it's like, what do you really own? But the lens people went to for their own PFP to cement their network was insane. And I think we're tapping into that same kind of energy, where it's like when you have true ownership, the incentives change. And Wiz, I know you have like a whole thing about ownership, if you want to jump in for a quick minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think ownership is one of the most discounted like things in crypto. Um, it's like what makes crypto itself unique, and I think it's one of the most powerful aspects that any ecosystem or token can actually give their users. Um, and so, yeah, if you can actually give people real skin in the game and the networks that you're building, uh, the ecosystems that you're building can grow 100 times larger than anything else.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm very stoked that you guys are pushing on this model. I think Josh and I have talked a bunch about about how compelling we think this sort of paired asset model is, and then how far can it be extended. And so my, I guess, critique or exploration here is really at the edges of trying to understand where that edge is, and I really don't know what the answer to
Yeah,
that
I
is.
think we'll all find out
Yeah.
eventually, right?
Yes.
Well, and I mean, I think one thing that always excites me, look, what excited me about this space was, I think, going back to like the ethos of true crypto. And I think in the last couple of years, we've had this really strong financial nihilism after last cycle. Because, you know, it's like at least last cycle, there was like, okay, VeChain, you own the supply chain of this thing. Da, da, da. Like it was trying to be something. Filecoin was trying to be something. The narrative amongst the normies was that you own, like, imagine if you could buy Google before they IPO. Like that was, you know, and then we went to this deep financial nihilism. And I think that like, I don't believe that that's the ultimate form of crypto. And I think that like what we're trying to do is we're trying to build something that's net new. Um, there's going to be, it's an experiment, and we're really excited to like put a lot at this experiment and understand, well, what happens when we play this experiment out? What happens when we take all the revenue and we programmatically send it back to stakers? What happens to that network? How do people react? How do people behave? What do people build?
Can you guys talk about, I guess, how you're bringing this to market and maybe what the next 6 months look like? I think we've seen, obviously, Pump was the first mover on the Solana side. I think, Clanker, early mover on the kind of base ETH side. And we've seen just how kind of sticky the network effects, and have seen a lot of kind of disruptor launch pads kind of come up and try new token models to little success. So I'm curious how you guys are approaching that and what you need to go do to get great assets to launch on Fey.
Yeah, Wiz, do you want to talk about the TGC for a second, and then because I think that leads
Yeah.
into the
So an initial problem we ran into when we wanted to launch Fey was like, okay, how do you take this decentralized permissionless protocol and launch it so that everybody's incentives are aligned, nobody's in control of this thing, and do it kind of like in the right way. And what we came up with was this concept of a TGC, or a token generation ceremony. And it looks from the outside a lot like a pre-sale, but it isn't. I could go, I guess it depends how deep you want me to go into the mechanics.
Tell us about the mechanics.
Yeah, we're down.
Yeah. Okay.
You have our
time,
attention.
but
You have our attention. Yeah.
Okay. So that the general idea behind it is, I want to launch a token. I want to launch a token in a decentralized way, and I want to give everybody who believes in this thing in the beginning, like, a good amount of upside, so that we're all incentivized to hold and launch this thing together. And so how a TGC works is everybody donates ETH to the ceremony contract. The community that wants to be part of it early donates ETH. For Fey, we did 35 ETH total, and we limited everyone to 0.1 ETH. So that was 350 people. And then we also donated ETH to seed a foundation with the Fey token, and then for like founder allocation. And when the ceremony kicks off, what it did for Fey was it went ahead and configured the whole protocol to work, deployed the staking contract, set everything up, and it deployed the token and did sequential dev buys. So everybody gets the token at like the optimal price. So the foundation goes first, the founders go second, and then the community buy happens after that. And then everybody can withdraw their tokens they get, their pro rata share, and then the whole network is running and everything works. And for us, initially we did that because that was like the best way to follow regulations, right? Like I didn't go and deploy a token and ask people to give me ETH. We all did it together, and we bootstrapped this protocol together. And we saw how powerful it was, and so we want to take that concept of the TGC and make that available to everyone who wants to deploy on Fei. And there's like also some interesting like economic side effects of this as well. At least when it comes to what a TGC is going to look like on Fei, because since all tokens on Fei are paired with it, the ETH first needs to go and do like market buy Fei, then use that to market buy the token that they're deploying as well. So all of that value goes back into making the network stronger and compounding value there as well.
Yeah. And I was going to jump in real quickly because I think an important point is that, like, look, at the end of the day, like anytime there's a new token launch on any network, the biggest thing that people have created all sorts of mechanics for, which we believe are band-aid fixes, token snipers, right? It's like, oh, we're going to tax everybody 90% in the first block and it's going to decay. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. But at the end of the day, if you ask like the first principles question, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get your early believers, the people that really believe in this thing, and not the people that are mercenary capital, to come in at a good price, and so that they feel good about it. They will put in effort and energy in terms of like, creating something on top of it, like any decentralized network. And I think that like if that's the fundamental question, then we're not like against snipers. Like snipers it's a game, you have tools, it exists, it happens. But I think what we did I think understand was that it's bad for an early network if a few small people get way too much of the supply, which is what snipers do. And so how do we prevent that? We didn't have any sort of like sniper blockage, any taxes on our launch. All we did is we did a TGC, and so that in the same block the token is deployed, the community that's diehard that really wants to get in are able to get in. And then if the snipers want to come in after that, great, fantastic. It's part of the game. But it's just like, how do you design something that works for everybody? Yeah. And so that was an important thing for us.
The most intriguing thing for me was how you guys came about it. And I guess even now in hearing you describe it, I think maybe I had a wrong conceptualization of what you guys were going after. And this model of how you get early believers in through these sort of allow listed donation or contributions, I think was very notable, at least when I saw it. And I think that's super interesting. I guess one of the core questions that we continue to debate here, maybe we're pretty clear, I think, on where we land, is how, I guess it follows from the question of like, when's the right time to launch a token? And the challenge, I think, in having a liquid token from sort of day one for a project, and the limitations that may come from future capital needs or resource needs, et cetera, and a closing off of sort of like the totality of the funding options one might have, because there's a liquid token that's trading out there, and there maybe is limited governance tools around how one can expand on that. So I'm curious, like, is there just a specific type of project that's going to be very well suited to Fei, or do you see this as actually being, like a unlock for a much wider group of entrepreneurs to use this to capitalize and build something?
I think what's really important for us is that, like, for the first time, we're going to have net new innovation in crypto through the Clarity Act. You saw Uniswap, we saw what Coinbase is doing. And so I think that we're interested in at two levels. The first level is that we want to get really interesting projects, really interesting experiments building on top of Fei that in previous years were just not possible. I mean, technically they were, but it wasn't the best idea to do that. That's the first thing. The second thing I think we want to do is we want to, so I guess what I'm saying is there's going to be a lot of experimentation now happening that before couldn't happen. So that's really exciting, and we want to make Fei the absolute number one place for that. The second thing is that, I forgot the second thing. Wiz, jump in here.
I think you had two questions there
Probably
as
had
well.
7, man. It was a rambling
Yeah.
question, so my fault.
I think the first one was like, when's the right time to launch a token?
Well, I think the idea that, you know, in many of these launch pads,
I got my second point. Sorry I just got it back, so I got to
Okay.
jump in. Second point was that I think as founders of Faye, we're doing things in a specific way, and so we're going to have people building products like Faith. That's going to be an early trading terminal, Axiom, but you own it, right? And so I think that as a network, the information that we want to have that makes it the most exciting place for people to launch tokens, like new experiments, is that we're also going to have an information network as well. We're going to have like the best founders that are experimenting specifically in new use cases. There's always going to be meme coins. There's always going to be launch pads for that. There's always going to be these things, but it's like with Faye at a cultural level, that's what we want to push: new experiments in crypto that weren't possible before. And then you'll also have the network itself and the people building on it doing really cool, interesting things that haven't been done before.
Okay, so yeah, I guess then the answer seems to be that you think something new is going to emerge here and that we shouldn't put it into any of the existing categories. I'm all
Correct.
about that. I love it. Help us understand what you're seeing as far as the types of things people are coming and being interested in launching on Faye might tell us about what these experiments look like. What are the interesting projects?
I think Faith is one of the big ones that are coming pretty soon. So one thing that we didn't do, which we got a lot of criticism for in the beginning, was like making token exploration really easy. Like generally you would think like, oh, you're creating a launch pad, like you should have some explore page where people can find all the tokens that are being created, right? But 99% of tokens deployed on any launch pad are going to be spam. And so we opened up that space for like people to come in and innovate. And so people have already started building terminals. I think there's Fayground, which is one that is live now. There's Faith, which is coming in the future. And how they work, like in Faith's case, like Atareh said, it's Axiom, but you own it. So what they're going to be doing is distributing, doing the same thing that we're doing, saying, okay, we have clear regulation now. We can actually give our users ownership in the thing that we're launching. And since we culturally set that up with Faye, I expect most of the projects to do that as well. There's there's like a meme on Faye Fupa. And one thing they did was they redirected all of the trading fees that happen on their meme coin to those who stake Faye. So all the trading that happens on their meme coin, all of those that 1% creator reward is going to stakers, right? And so everybody's kind of incentivized to continue to like compound the value that this network is creating and giving it back to the owners of the launchpad. And so generally there's going to be a lot of that just because culturally we started that
Right, but
behavior.
I mean, the pushback on that is cool. I mean, if the thing isn't valuable, the sort of tie-in back to the underlying ownership and the token model isn't valuable as well. And I think really what we're seeing right now is a running at the core question of like what makes tokens valuable, what makes these sort of micro cap or community launch tokens valuable, what sort of scale can they get to, and the proving out of the ability of one of these things to break out seems like a necessary component of your success. I don't know, maybe you would push back against that.
You need your runner.
Everybody says that. Everybody's like, "Where's the runner? What's the runner?"
I mean, do you
Which,
disagree?
look, I think, I don't know if I disagree, but I don't think that. Like, okay, how about this? We've had there's been a bunch of launch pads on Solana over this past summer. They've all had a runner, right? There's a lot of, I think, people that help market all those launch pads as well. But I think when you look, right? But I think if you look at the fundamental problem, the fundamental problem is that the incentives are completely misaligned, because those launch pads, what do? They take their 1% take rate. So you can spin up a launch pad, get enough KOLs, people talking about it, and pummel 30 million, 50 million volume through. You will get your take rate for as a company, as an organization, and then naturally, like when that model ceases to work, because it's effectively like pump fund but in like a different micro niche, it's stops working, and then as a founder, the incentives are just no longer there because you've cleared your 1% for your organization, and so you can walk away. And so I think that like that's one aspect of it. And so I'm not denying that, of course,
Yeah,
every
it's a
launchpad needs a
necessary,
runner.
not sufficient piece, I think is fair, but I do
It's
think it
a
is necessary.
it's completely necessary. I think I'm not denying that whatsoever, but I think that like that's the question that everybody asks us: where's your runner? What's the runner? What's the runner? I think it's great for marketing. I think it's a really important piece for marketing because everybody's like, oh, this was the runner off of that launchpad. And I think that like with we believe that it'll be Fate because of the team that's building it, because of what they're actually building.
Yeah, I think
It's real tech.
describing it as a runner is maybe not quite as useful. I think like being able to demonstrate and define this unique type of thing that is going to come from this unique economic model and network, I think is probably the big opportunity. And I think we could look at sort of meme coins on Pump as having done that, and also take from that okay, well, that model just copied a million times isn't going to create the same results for net new networks. So we need to have something new that's coming off of it. But I do think this, I mean, there's going to be certain types of teams that are very aligned with this economic model. Many won't be. That's just the reality of founders choosing. And so I think the ones that break out are going to be defining of either a new type of category of token network product that can emerge, or ultimately not. So I think that's the
yeah. It's more like what's like the hero example of what's uniquely possible on Fey, or the type of the thing that kind of sets your like social and cultural norms in motion.
Yeah.
That gives that gives the next round of people permission who are interested or ideologically aligned to come do the same thing.
I think
Totally.
the TGC is going to do that in some ways, a lot of ways. I think that's going to be the big differentiator here, is that like if you can imagine a TGC happening every week, like the network value grows very fast.
When do those kick off?
We are building all of that right now, probably within the next couple of weeks. I don't want to give like a hard date because then everybody's like, you said this day.
We feel it is our responsibility to try to get you to give us a hard date, and you're saying no to
squeeze it out of me.
Give me the minute.
Yeah, no, we're working on it right now. That's our number one priority.
And I think one thing there is that part of that is Fate will be the first project that will be using that model on Fate after obviously the Fate token itself. And then the follow on after that, which is what we're just talking about, as well as that decentralized way of like, hey, you want to launch a token. Here's a playbook of how you want to do it from like at a social level, at a technical level. And then I think the final piece is the TGC. It's like, here you go. Here's this beautiful piece of code that you use to bootstrap and get everybody in and build from there. And I think that benefits the network, that benefits their community, benefits us, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I find the whole thing very compelling with a big question mark around it, which I think is maybe my favorite mix of things, where I could both.
I think that's why we're doing it.
Yeah,
There's question
for sure.
marks.
No, that's why I'm stoked that you guys are doing it. But I do think this sort of, if we look back to what is the innovation that ultimately led to Pump's success, it wasn't meme coins. It was the bonding curve model that was a solution to a very real pain people were feeling and wanting to be a part of these new tokens. And I think like clearly there are major issues with the bonding curve model for anybody that's not trying to just purely launch a short-term meme coin. And so what are the solution sets for that? And so I think
perhaps the pain here is that we've had 2.5 years of financial nihilism where everything means nothing, and tokens only trade on attention. And that for the first time, we're going to have an opportunity to think about value accrual at a token level, and we are positioned Fate to be the number one place for those kinds of experiments.
I mean, we've seen a lot of experiments with sort of value accrual to token models. So, and I find it all very interesting, but I mean, you're far from the first to do that.
Also, buy and burn's clearly not really working. So,
I mean, it isn't sufficient. Again, I think we look at Hyperliquid as sort of like one that spans these two models, and I guess that's fair in the way that you're approaching this as well, right? That there is sort of there's these fees, and there's also the pairing. And I think maybe that is the right way to think about it. It's I think if I look at the Zora model, it's unfair to just say that it's just purely quote pair model. They're charging fees. Their equity entity is earning fees to go pay for development, et cetera. Very powerful. If I look at Hyperliquid, there is sort of this fees going to buy and burns, but then it is this HIP-3 thing, or like that kind of creates this quote pair like dynamic, or at least a sync that I think is what gives people some more confidence in there being, some potential unknown upside to that. And I think so maybe those are the dynamics that ultimately are going to be found in most of these sort of application level networks that leverage tokens: ownership, revenues, and that token being inherent to the way that value is created and captured in that network.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. Okay, so new projects coming soon. I was just sort of looking at the dashboard here. I am one of these people who's like, good God, guys, give me a little bit more fucking information here. Come on, how am I trying to process this stuff?
Somebody
But
did build a dashboard with all the revenue and everything on it.
yeah, I'm looking at the staking piece here. I think it's 79% of all phase staked, which I don't know how to judge that, but it seems high and sort of aligned, and I guess follows from the way that you've
Faithful.
launched this. You can sort of allude to. I think that anybody can trigger the buyback is actually a really genius little piece here as far as the network design.
Raz says it's Nouns 2.0 in that like kind of like the auction daily. It's a ritual, so I think there's a lot of we're trying to bring back a little bit of the Nan energy, I think, into what we're
So
doing
there's going to
here
be a
as well.
ceremony around the burn every day. Is that the idea?
Maybe.
Burn ceremony. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I do. Maybe last question before we let you guys go. And I appreciate you guys being generous with your time here. I think hopefully you can tell we're just deeply fascinated with all this stuff. One of my beliefs is that we're seeing that if we sort of look back at why L1s and other network tokens have been valuable, it's that there's three components that have come together. One is the ability to generate fees and revenue. The other is sort of like the net new asset issuance on the chains, which is ultimately like what makes their token money-like in some way. And the other is the social component, where there's sort of a self-referencing group of people that be the sort of the base trust layer and community, and I guess you guys have called it the ownership layer. And if I look at what Farcaster is doing, I see them being one of the more bold sort of demonstrations of this, right? Where they clearly see transaction fees on trading as an opportunity. They clearly see asset issuance with their acquisition of Clanker as key. And they've invested a lot in building the social context and the rails to enable that social context. I'm wondering if that model sort of fits into how you're imagining the next steps with Faye. And maybe my question is like, where is the social consensus being built in your community today?
Wiz, do you want to take that?
My 47-minute long questions that have too many.
Yeah, I'm trying to piece through all the questions.
I mean, I'll rephrase and just say, like, where is the community congregating today? Where's the center of the social dynamic within Faye?
Right now, it's definitely in our Discord. So we've got tons of people in Discord, people building on Faye, people preparing to launch stuff on Faye. That every day we get together in Discord and we share our ideas and what we're building. So definitely, like, if you want to get like more information on the day-to-day or get an idea of how vibrant the community is right now, Discord is the place. And it's not even a Discord we set up. Somebody first day went, set it up, we joined, and now that's just become it's just become where everybody meets. And so if you go there, definitely like verify with your wallet with Guild XYZ, and you'll get access to all the private chats where everybody's having like the deep discussions.
Raz is a big bull. He's been up in my DMs quite a bit. So we love Raz.
Yeah, we appreciate Raz. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I mean, we have, I think Dex Screener here saying you have just over 3,000 token holders. So small but meaningful early believer set. Liquidity is there. token is down off its all-time high, as with everything in the market right now. And so I feel like I was worried I was offside here, and now I feel like I get to come in probably very similar to the same level that most people have come into it on. I think we are doing a buy of Faye today as part of the 11 a.m. strategy, or have already completed that buy. So
It's done.
any
It
11 a.m.
is
token
done.
holders have
sweet.
have skin in the game here.
Let's go.
And we've had a couple already burns off of it. I think we hit our second one yesterday. So I don't know. I'm bullish on this. I think Josh and I just generally believe in the quote pair model as being one of the more interesting dynamics that's emerged as far as token design in the last little while. Honestly, still have a big question mark around, you know, the breadth of the ways that it can be applied, but have taken positions, I think, generally in teams that are pushing on that, because I think it's it's one of those non-consensus bets that feels like it should be a lot more consensus. The discussion around it feels still very limited relative to the level of intrigue I have from it, and I think the level of intrigue that some smart folks like yourselves have as well. So it's interesting. Fuck, you guys got me on rants today. You got me ranting today.
I mean, I was going to quickly just send off. I think it's a funny story, but because it happened in Discord. But how me and Wiz met was also in a Lil Nas Discord, where he had joined, and this is like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, what a throwback!
I was in that Discord, man.
I was in there too.
Yeah. So I think I was saying something, and this new guy comes in with like a wizard PFP noun, and was like, kind of saying, no, that's a stupid idea. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? What is he? And then we go back and forth, and then I'm like, do you want to just jump on a voice chat? We're like, okay, we jump in the voice chat, and I think within the first 30 seconds, we both were like, okay, you seem pretty smart. There was a mutual level check there. We're like, okay, cool, all right. And then later on hung out in person and all that stuff. So I just thought it was a funny story because it started in Discord as well. And I mean, I'm just speak about Wiz, he's done a lot for nouns and in that ecosystem. And I've been hounding him for like years to say, hey, we got to build something. And it's, I guess the most exciting part for me as well as in all of this is to work with Wiz on and create something that I think is net new, because I think he's an absolute whiz when it comes to incentives design and like smart contracts. So
we love the dad jokes here on 11 a.m. Well done.
Had to slip that one in there.
All right, guys. So I mean, it looks like couple weeks away from the next sort of big launch, though I'm assuming just with some searching here, some folks are clearly poking around, launching stuff in this ecosystem. I think the Faye Farcaster account is probably the best place to stay up to date, if I'm incorrect there, beyond jumping
Faye Farcaster and Faye Protocol on X.
Twitter.
Okay. Those are the two places, and then like me and Wiz on our X and Farcaster both have commentary just about things about Faye, about what's happening in the ecosystem. So those are also good follows as well.
Easy.
Yeah.
Right on, guys. Well, please ping us ahead of whenever the next thing is launching. I think this is a very worthwhile experiment to be paying attention to. Stoked that you guys are, I think, that you're running at it and the way that you're running at it. And would love for you to go put another clear mark in the "this model works" category for the rest of us builders, as we're trying to continue to figure out what the fuck to actually do out here.
Love it.
Making ownership great again. Thanks, fellas.
Making ownership great again. That's the hat. Thank you.
You're welcome.